Hello, you're listening to Shoot the Hostage. My name's Sarah, and together with my partner Dan, we are a movie podcast where we talk about 8 different films per season based around a specific theme. Now, if you're hearing my voice, that means it's my choice of theme this season. But before we get stuck in, I do want to mention we get quite spoilery, so please bear that in mind. We don't want to ruin the film for you, so if you haven't seen it, maybe go away and then come back. If you like what you hear and you would like to help us out, there are a number of ways you can do that. The absolute easiest one is to just recommend us to a friend. If you want to go the extra mile, a 5-star review on Spotify would be hugely appreciated. A review on your podcast player of choice would also be hugely helpful. And if you really, really want to help us, we've got a Patreon, which is £3 a month, and you get access to a ton of extra content in the form of reviews of new cinema releases, new streaming releases. You get to see the lineup of the season ahead of time, and we do a wrap show at the end of every season. But all of that aside, I just want to say thank you for listening, and let's get stuck in. So, Dan, we're back to talk more coming-of-age movies.
Yep.
We're here to talk at length about periods again.
Oh, yeah. This season could also be called the period season, right? Apart from Stand By Me, there were no periods in Stand By Me.
There were no periods in Stand By Me, no. This film does share a lot of DNA with Carrie.
Do you think?
I do.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Are we going to get into that more?
Perhaps.
Yeah, okay.
Perhaps.
We'll see where it leads us.
But of course, we are covering 2000's Ginger Snaps, directed by John Fawcett, a Canadian horror film that I love dearly.
Spoilers.
And that you have seen.
Oh, no, I have seen it. Yes, I have seen it, and I shall attempt to talk about it.
Yeah.
And try and get my feelings about it out.
So that's good. That's what we're here to do.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Is this the first film that we've covered that's named after a biscuit?
I believe so. I can't think of another.
Way of the Gun. No, it's not a type of biscuit, is it? Mars Attacks is confectionery, kind of, because of that chocolate bar. Mars. Yeah. And it's a planet, to be fair.
Yeah. Mars Attacks refers to the planet. I'm pretty sure it wasn't like chocolate bars attack.
That's why that movie was so disappointing. You'll hear that in our review of the show back in season 3? Aliens? Yes. I can't really remember.
I
think it was season 3, yeah.
It's been ages. So, when was the first time you saw Ginger Snaps?
It was, probably about 2 years ago, would you say?
Around that, yeah.
Around 2 years ago. I had never seen it.
Had you heard of it?
I think I had heard of it. I sort of, as is often the case with movies I haven't seen, I was aware of it, I think. Mm-hmm. But it was more the poster, probably like when you go into blockbusters back in, you would have done back in 2000. I would have done. I did. And probably you did too.
I did.
Because you were also a fan of films, aren't you?
Yes. That's why we're here.
I think I was kind of vaguely aware of the poster of the film. Had no idea that there were any sequels. Mm-hmm. Didn't really know anything about it. Didn't know it was a werewolf movie.
Didn't know there were periods.
I had no idea about the periods. And it's not something that I was ever really that bothered by seeing. It was sort of in that, for me, that pile of movies where you've got Joshua Jackson's trying to get a magic key, or Paul Walker is part of a secret cult thing.
Oh, I know that one, The Skulls.
Yeah. And that Rosenbaum one where there's the old stories that kill people. Urban Legend, yeah. Like all of those kind of movies for me are in this. I'm not saying that is the case with this movie. It's not at all. Mm-hmm. I was completely wrong. But for me, I was like, oh, it's probably one of those mediocre at best kind of horror movies, teen horror movies that I just got sick of in the late 90s and the early 2000s.
That's absolutely fair. There was definitely a deluge around that time.
I think I stopped watching them after I Know What You Did Last Summer. I was like, okay, I get it.
Okay.
I've seen these now.
So you were like done in the late 90s.
Yeah.
You were over it already.
It's kind of.
Okay.
And I think that's probably where, not that this film is a slasher, it's not, but that's where I think I probably fell off or decided that I was sick of slasher movies around about the age I was 14, 15, going, yeah, I've seen this movie 30 times already.
I'm nearly 42 and I'm still not there.
No, that's fair. And you get way more out of slashers than I do. I'm just like, I can't. I know what's happening. And there's, I guess, a comfort to that. But I just get quite bored by them unless they do something really different like that one, that comedy. What's that comedy one? The
Behind
Leslie
the Mask?
Vernon?
The Rise of Leslie Vernon.
That's funny.
I love that movie.
Yeah, that's very good. Very interesting take on that genre that we're not meant to be talking about.
No, because this is not one.
No. We'll get back to, we'll probably do a slasher season at some point, I imagine.
Yeah.
Oh, God, that's going to be so samey, isn't it? But I think what I'm trying to say is I unfairly put this movie in that kind of pile where this is actually, there's way more to this than I probably had given it credit for prior to my viewing. But so I was I didn't love it when I first saw it. It wasn't really my thing, but it is quite rich and there's quite a lot of stuff in it that you can kind of dig into and appreciate if you're paying attention. I'm guessing you saw it when it came out. Day one, were you there?
I don't think I was there.
Popcorn in hand?
No, I didn't see it on a big screen. There were no screenings of it.
Okay. Straight to video, was it?
Yeah, it would have been. Yeah. The DVD that I have that I'm looking at right now on the shelf in front of me is that's been in my collection for over 20 years.
Okay.
So I don't think it was a blind buy. I must have rented it first. But as soon as I saw it, I was just blown away. First
time viewing, loved it.
Yeah. And I found it quite curious at the time as well, because as you say, around that era, there were so many films that dealt with teenagers as the protagonists, and a lot of them were quite samey.
And didn't really say anything.
Didn't have a lot to say, perhaps.
Empty and hollow, yeah.
Yeah, and obviously off the back of Scream, like Kevin Williamson was the guy for a little while, wasn't he? But I find that really odd because the dialogue in this is so sharp and so much better than a lot of what he was putting out.
Yeah.
And I don't think it gets enough credit for that. We will talk about that later and come back to the writer Karen Walton, I believe. But yeah, this has been in heavy rotation for me for decades. 2 decades at this point.
Exactly 2.
Yeah.
Well, 2.5 really, isn't it?
Yeah. Stop it.
2.4.
Stop that.
So were you, when the sequels were you keeping up with the news back then? Like, were you aware that they were going to make sequels for this?
No.
I know information back then was not as easy to come by as it is now, but we still had Google. You could still, I remember Googling movie news quite a lot back then.
Yeah. I mean, there was like, Ain't It Cool News was big, wasn't it?
Was it? Okay.
Harry Knowles, I want to say, was like a really prolific movie blogger. He had one of like the biggest sites.
Okay.
But yeah, it was a bit of a wasteland. It wasn't as easy to come by that sort of information as it is now.
Yeah.
So no, I wasn't aware of the sequels, but I did get hold of them as soon as I could.
Okay. They were made at the same time, I think.
2 and 3.
2 and 3. Yeah. Because 2 is a... Are we not going to spoil 2 and 3? I'm guessing because we're not talking about those movies, or
yeah. I mean, let's keep it light.
Yeah, but 2 is a direct sequel to this, and I remember parts of that movie. And
you haven't seen 3, have you?
I've not seen.
I'm not a huge fan of 3,
but that's a period movie. Is that a period movie?
I guess so. Yeah.
Nailed it. Right, we can stop this podcast now.
We've said all we need to.
It's great. Anyway, next week we're doing not saying 3. I imagine that I probably will watch it at some point because I've seen the first 2. May as well complete the trilogy.
I mean, I've got all 3 because you were kind enough to buy me that lovely Second Sight Blu-ray.
You're welcome.
So I would like to reappraise the 3rd one at some point.
Okay.
Give it a second go around.
Yeah. You mentioned a Second Sight. There's a ton of extras on that. There are 3 commentaries just for the first movie.
That's crazy.
It's great.
And you watched all 3?
I watched the one with John Fawcett.
Yep.
And I watched half an hour of the one with Karen Walton.
Oh, yep.
And I wish I'd started with that one because I just ran out of time and couldn't finish it.
Who's the 3rd one then?
Ooh, I didn't recognise the name. but possibly some kind of film historian maybe, or you know, because sometimes they do that with these second sight ones. They get people that have maybe written extensively about a film and have various pieces online about it, and you know, sometimes it's kind of that situation. So it could be that, or maybe it's someone involved. I don't know to answer your question who it is.
Fascinating.
Person. It's a human person, I believe.
Cool.
But yeah, there's deleted scenes which I was hoping I'd get a chance to watch, but I didn't. Again, I ran out of time. So there's a bunch you can just dig into, but they're always worth it.
Still really pushing hard for that second sight collaboration, aren't you?
I thought I was being more subtle.
Sponsor us. Please. If only to shut him up. I've got a question for you.
Yeah.
Do you find yourself less likely to watch movies where girls are the protagonists? Or did you, round about the time this came out? Is that another reason that perhaps you were put off by it?
I don't think that I knew that there were young women as protagonists.
Okay.
Necessarily. That's an interesting question. I want to say no, I don't think I was put off.
Okay.
I'm wondering if that's just me, like in my current frame of mind, though. I mean, I was a 16-year-old boy, and I was an idiot. So, no, I don't think so.
Okay.
I just don't think, like I said, I think it was just in that pile of teen kind of horror movies that I just had got on board by, regardless of who the protagonists were.
That's fair. So, we've already established it's not a slasher. It is, in fact, a werewolf movie.
Werewolf.
Mm.
I learned only a few short years ago that it's not WHERE, like werewolves.
You didn't.
WEAR, werewolves. It's WERE, it's werewolves. It's were. It's very confusing to me. Yeah, I'm not a clever man. Anyway.
But sometimes you are. Sometimes you say stuff that's really genuinely intelligent and insightful.
No, I'm just copying what I hear online.
And then no, you're not. And then other days, it's like it's your first day on the planet.
I'm complicated. What can
You're
I say?
the English Theo Von, and I will stand by that statement.
I just need a mullet and that chin.
Some weird sort of
thing.
Amish underbeard.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I can grow that out if you like.
So, in addition to it being a werewolf movie, it's also a Canadian horror movie.
Yeah. Not our first Canadian horror movie. We obviously spoke about Come True.
You ended that a funny time. We spoke about Come. Excuse me. Did we?
Not on the podcast, I keep telling you. Come True we spoke about, which is a Canadian horror movie.
It is, yeah.
Also has a connection to this movie. Do you know what it is?
No. Should I?
No, I was very surprised when I was watching the extras, because the first extra I watched on the second sight, really great
pack-in
edition, is Vincenzo Natali was a storyboard artist on this movie.
Was he?
Yeah.
Oh.
And
how does that connect to Come True?
He was a producer on Come True.
Was he? So there's also a through line to our Cube episode.
Yes.
Fascinating.
Yes. So that's the third season in a row where Vincenzo Natali was involved in a film that we're talking about. So there's another one as well. I think it's Steve Hoban, a producer of this movie, was also a producer on Come True.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And also, I think Come True might be one of the... we love that movie. We think it's excellent, but it didn't do very well.
No.
Financially. It made quite a big loss, and so did this movie.
It did,
This did badly as well. I think it could be, those two might be the two lowest, or apart from Police Academy 7, which made about $38, I think.
38p.
Yeah. Half of which was me at the cinema. Yeah. So, yeah, connections to Come True.
Interesting. Okay. Because I was going to say, like, we have actually covered more Canadian horror movies than I realised so far.
Yeah.
Because obviously you've already mentioned Come True and Cube, but we've also covered Possessor.
Yes.
We've also covered Black Christmas.
Yes.
So I was kind of shocked by how much that keeps coming up. But there's a kind of a wealth of horror that comes out of Canada.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Is that post 2000? Would you say?
Well, I mean, Black Christmas was what, 74?
Black Christmas is, yeah.
My Bloody Valentine, I believe, was like 1980 or 81.
Yeah. There were a few.
So they've been pumping them out for a while, but it seems like when they're good, they're really good. And there's obviously a lot we don't get to hear about. One of your favourites, Psycho Goreman, is technically a Canadian horror movie.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, the Astron 6 guys are Canadian.
It's Canadian then.
So all of that stuff, like Father's Day, Manborg, The Editor, The Void.
Yeah, that's a good
one.
And just to put a note on this, we will be covering Psycho Goreman at some point.
I'm sure we will, yeah.
Because I haven't seen it for a couple of months.
Well, he's got a new one coming out at some point, Frankie Frico,
Ooh.
that's been doing the festival rounds.
Okay.
I'm quite keen to see.
Exciting. But make Psycho Goreman 2, though.
Okay, yeah. Kostansky, if you're listening,
yeah.
do the thing. But yeah, obviously everything, all of the Cronenbergs have done.
Yeah, I mean, when you say Canadian horror, I immediately think Cronenberg.
The Fly, Videodrome, like Scanners.
Dead Ringers.
Yeah, yeah. Things like The Changeling, which I hadn't realised was a Canadian horror movie.
Yeah. Existence,
yeah. The Soska Sisters, obviously American Mary, which also stars Catherine Isabelle from this movie.
Yep. That's probably her more well-known film, right?
American Mary.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say so.
Because she's done quite a lot of TV, I think.
She has, yes. She was also in Freddy vs. Jason, which we rewatched quite recently.
Right. Yes, you're correct.
But yeah, so it's kind of amazing that the Canadian horror scene doesn't get talked about more, because actually when you sit down and you look at it, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, and it's funny how we've picked a few of them without really thinking about it as well.
Yeah.
I guess that's going to make doing a Canadian horror season a bit more difficult.
Maybe. I don't think we're going to get to a specific Canadian horror season for quite some time.
No, and if we did, it would probably be your choice.
Yeah, almost certainly.
I'll do Canadian sci-fi. How about that?
I'll
do Cube too. No, we're not doing
Hypercube. No.
I'm not watching Hypercube again.
So in terms of ginger snaps,
the snack,
no,
or the movie,
the movie that we're here to discuss.
We should have bought ginger snaps.
We should have done.
Had ginger snaps while we were recording this.
We shoulda, woulda, coulda, but didn't.
No, I always think of these things too late. I like ginger snaps.
Oh my god! So to me, this film is kind of akin to Midnight Mass.
In what way?
In the way that when I watched Midnight Mass,
the Flanagan
series, that he did for Netflix, I couldn't believe that nobody had sort of thought to tie Catholicism and vampirism and like the blood of Christ and all of this sort of stuff
such an intrinsic way
together in such a fantastic literal and metaphorical way.
Yeah.
And the same is true here, like the notion of puberty and the transformation that comes with it is so, like, it's so obvious to pair that with werewolves.
Yeah.
That it's kind of amazing it hadn't really been done before.
Yeah.
And we're not going to talk about Teen Wolf. I don't want to hear anything about Teen Wolf before you even say it.
Ask you about other coming of age werewolf movies. And that's the only other one I could think of.
Yeah.
Teen Wolf and Teen Wolf 2. The Jason Bateman movie.
Yeah.
Which I really want to watch.
Why?
Because I'm curious.
Have you never seen the second one?
I think so. Yeah, I must have, because I remember those movies being done just all the time.
Yeah.
Ad nauseum when we were kids.
But it's crazy to me that hadn't been linked before.
Yeah, it is funny. Like you say, Midnight Mass is a really good comparison because it seems, you watch it and you go, of course, like it's so obvious.
It is, yeah.
They go together like chalk and chalk. And the same is true with the werewolf and the growing up situation in terms of these two young women, Bridget and Ginger.
Yes.
And you've got the whole lunar cycle, monthly cycle thing. I think at some point they had toyed around with the idea of calling this The Curse, the movie.
Okay.
And she says that in the film, I've got the curse. And she's talking about a period. But little does she know, later on, she becomes a werewolf.
The Curse of the Werewolf, yeah.
Yeah, it's great. It's genius pairing,
Mm-hmm.
and it works so well. And the everything that the Ginger goes through, like you say, it's one of those movies where you can take it literally, metaphorically. It's a horror film, so this transformation is happening, but also it's a metaphor for puberty, growing up, getting your period, and all of the things that you go through. And there's lots really that you can dig into with this film. I find I didn't do an awful lot of digging in terms of the themes of this movie, because I wanted to sort of have more of a discussion about it, and I wanted to know what you thought about them, and if there are any other ones that are not particularly obvious, because it's quite an obvious film. Like there's sometimes when I watch films and like I don't get really, but like no, I get this is obvious. You're okay, I get it, cool. But are there any other things that are happening in this theme wise that you think were more subtle?
Well, so I don't know if it's intentional. I assume it's probably not intentional, but I did read a couple think pieces about how it works perfectly as a metaphor for the trans experience as well.
Yeah, interesting.
And how, because obviously a lot of trans people describe having to go through. I mean, puberty is unpleasant. Full stop. For everybody, puberty is pretty unpleasant.
Yeah,
like these changes happen. Your body starts to look different. You feel awkward, and I'm speaking for myself here. I felt very awkward.
Yeah.
And you have to sort of learn to be a grown up, and it's a really, really difficult time. But something that I think doesn't necessarily get talked about very much is the fact that obviously trans people have to go through a puberty in a body they're already uncomfortable in, potentially. And then when they transition, they have to go through a second puberty with hormone replacements. And I think a lot of the trans community have kind of embraced this film because they feel seen.
That's interesting. Yeah, you have got an element there of, well, you've got the most phallic thing in this movie is the tail that Ginger grows, isn't it? And that's kind of they're trying to tape it down and hide it.
She tries to cut it off at one point.
Yeah, exactly. So, you could sort of read something into that. There's the scene where she is growing hair and is becoming frustrated that she's growing hair in weird places that she doesn't want. Like, like you say, the growing up is confusing enough, going through puberty is confusing enough, that if you also add the kind of, what body am I in? I'm not sure this is correct situation. It just must be even more confusing. And I think I can see why this movie's been embraced by these communities in the way that it has. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few really interesting pieces of writing out there, actually. If you look online, there's a few that kind of take a bit of a queer reading and delve into the sisters, their bond, like that it verges on romantic and intimate at times and stuff. I don't know how much I agree with that. It's not something that ever occurred to me while watching, but it's interesting. It's interesting to read and ponder that stuff.
I did it must have been the John Fawcett commentary I watched, because it was at the end of the movie. It's the scene where Ginger says to Bridget, we're practically not related anymore. And he said he was going for a kind of a subtle sexual idea there.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think that was kind of intentional as well.
Right. That's interesting. Okay. Yeah, that's not a reading I've ever really taken away from this film.
Yeah.
Which is surprising given how much of my last season was filled with incest.
Yeah. This is almost an incest movie. It's a Jack's cock away from being an incest movie, isn't it?
But it's not. I'm normal, I promise.
Well, I wouldn't go that far. I wouldn't say that you're normal, particularly.
All right. So this film opens, we get the cold open with the first dead dog.
Of course, yeah. I was going to bring this up. I'm glad that you did. Yeah, the opening scene. Yeah, dead dog. Oh, gruesome.
This is not a film for dog lovers.
No, dogs are oft all over the place.
Yeah.
Norman doesn't last very long.
Norman's
great though. I love the way he's hanging off that hockey stick. That makes me laugh. That makes me smile every time I see it. But yeah, the opening is interesting. Like, you got the kids playing in the sandpit or whatever, and you see the dead dog, and the mum's really upset by that. She grabs a kid and she runs out into the street. I really like how the camera goes towards the dog and then into the kennel.
Yeah.
I thought that was very interesting and just quite artistic, and it was like, okay, so we're thinking about dogs, are we? Like, I knew it was, I think maybe you told me it's a werewolf movie, or maybe you hadn't. I can't remember.
I can't remember, actually, no.
But maybe it was on the second viewing, actually, because I would say I got more out of this on the second viewing than I did the first viewing.
Right, okay.
Definitely. I still don't love watching it, but I do think it's probably similar to my experience with Stand By Me. I do think it's very good, and there's a lot of merit.
You just don't have like a visceral hatred for any of the songs in the movie.
No.
That I know of, anyway.
Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah.
But
the opening is good, and then she runs out into the street, and it's suburban, and no one gives a fuck. No one cares about what's going on because that's suburbia. And the commentary with Karen Walton, she was quite aggressive towards suburbia. She hates it. Like,
really?
She's like, I can't fucking stand suburbia. Yeah, you've got idiots here and idiots there, and it was interesting, the portrayal of that.
Okay.
And just the kind of your experience is your experience. No one else cares unless it's happening to them. And I guess that's a lot of the fabric of this movie as well. Is that the kids are on their own to a degree?
Yeah, and I think that attitude is kind of distilled into Mimi Rogers' character.
Yeah.
Because she is like full on sort of Stepford wife.
Yeah.
At points anyway. Well, that's what you're led to believe.
Yeah, she's always making a cake, or she's got cookies and milk on the side.
Yeah.
Yeah. Apparently, Mimi Rogers was playing that as if she was an emotionally abusive parent.
Oh, okay.
Which I thought was very interesting, particularly with what she does in the third act. Maybe we'll get back to that later.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I'm fascinated.
But sticking with kind of the beginning of the movie and the pairing as well of let's do some names.
Catherine Isabel.
And
Emily Perkins.
And Emily Perkins, yeah. Who are really weirdly linked in a way. Did you find out anything about this?
Well, I read that the casting directors were looking for people to fill those roles for about 6 months.
Yeah.
And they were kind of at their wits' end. And then both Perkins and Isabel went to audition on the same day.
Okay.
Which I thought was quite interesting.
Yeah.
They must have thought they'd struck gold.
I think so. Well, apparently they were born in the same hospital.
Okay.
They're 5 years apart, but they're born in the same hospital.
Oh, yeah, because Emily Perkins is actually the older one, isn't she? Even though she plays the younger sister.
Oh, is she?
Yeah.
Oh, I did not know that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. They went to the same school. Their parents were friends.
No way.
They had the same agent. Did you know that they've both been in a Stephen King TV adaptation?
I knew Emily Perkins was in the original It miniseries.
Yep.
She was OG Beverly.
Yep, that's right.
What's Catherine Isabel been in?
She was in something we spoke about in episode 1 of our Coming of Age season, Carrie. She was in a TV adaptation of Carrie that we spoke about. The TV
right.
movie.
The one with Angela Bettis. Okay.
Sure. Yeah, that one.
Interesting.
They were both in Supernatural at various points.
I knew that, yeah.
And they were both in Christopher Nolan's Insomnia.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Randomly, yeah.
Okay. They make such good siblings in this movie.
They're really good. Perkins is great.
Fantastic.
And, I mean, there's things in this movie that are really good, like the special effects, the makeup.
Mm-hmm.
Less so the wig.
Her wig is so bad.
But
I've always thought that.
I think
so obvious.
She should have gotten an Oscar for putting in a performance as good as that with that fucking hairpiece on her.
Yeah.
I thought she was excellent. Doesn't act anymore, you were saying. It's not an actor.
I don't know. I feel like, God, this is going back maybe like 10 years ago when I was doing one of my IMDb hopping episodes where I was like, ginger snaps, and just going from profile to profile.
Yeah, I'm aware of that.
Yep. And I seem to remember reading that she'd not necessarily given up acting, but had stopped for the time being and was working as a lecturer at a university in the UK.
As in, in the UK?
Yeah.
Oh, we could go to one of her lectures, maybe.
Maybe.
I wonder if it's like film or English or something.
I honestly don't know. I don't have the full details, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I looked at her credits in preparation for this, And I think the last thing that I would have seen her in was that god-awful alien movie with Michael Ironside called Extraterrestrial, which is worth watching
for one scene
alone, where your jaw will fall on the floor.
Yeah.
But it's hilarious.
Yes.
But apart from that, yeah, it's toilet.
She was in that. Beginning.
I don't remember her, or while I was watching it, didn't make those links with Ginger Snaps at all. But
she was right at the beginning, and she runs into the phone booth.
Right. Okay.
If I remember rightly.
Yeah.
I'd forgotten that film until you just said that.
I think about it way too much, you know.
Yeah, Catherine Isabel's kind of a bit of a horror movie icon, thanks to roles like this. Obviously, we've already mentioned American Mary, which she's fantastic in.
That's her movie.
I love that film. Freddy vs. Jason. She's also been in, I think the Soska sisters did a movie with a wrestler in it. I think they did like a WWE movie. It's a horror film. I think it was called See No Evil.
Okay.
But I'm pretty sure she was in that, or perhaps the sequel. I didn't think it was very good, I'll be honest. But yeah, she's kind of remained in the genre for a lot of her career.
Yeah.
So she seems to be well loved amongst horror fans.
Okay.
Quite rightly.
Probably always at a con.
Yes.
Always signing her name. How many times do you reckon she signed her name? 100? At least.
At least 100, yeah. At least 7.
We've already mentioned Mimi Rogers, who I know mostly from Lost in Space. Underrated movie.
Good
She's
Lord.
in the Doors movie as magazine photographer.
The Oliver Stone, Val Kilmer one. Okay.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that in a long time.
I've never seen it. I never saw it. Did you, Chris Lemche or Lemk? Chris Lemche is Sam. He's in Existence, which we mentioned earlier. Cronenberg connection. Yep.
I seem to remember him from a film called My Little Eye, which I loved when it came out.
Sounds familiar.
But I haven't seen in a couple of decades.
Cillian Murphy in it?
No.
Am I thinking of Red Little Eye?
Yeah.
Red Eye. Right.
No, My Little Eye was kind of sort of reality TV horror, kind of.
All right.
It's better than it sounds, or it was.
Yeah.
When I watched it
Did it have
last.
Stephen Dorff in it?
No.
Okay. Did you know Lucy Lawless is in this movie?
I did read that she's credited as like thanks to. I had no idea until this viewing. I must have seen this film 25 times.
Yeah.
And I didn't realise until this viewing that she was the, what do you call it, the announcer.
Tannoy, PA.
Yeah.
At the school.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was on a commentary on the.
Right.
I can't remember which one it was, but yeah, they mentioned that it's Lucy Lawless, and I had to Google what Lucy Lawless was.
Xena.
Xena. I never saw that show.
Cool.
I never saw Stargate either. I'm thinking about 90s sci-fi now, but I need to be focused on what we're talking about. For God's sake, Lucy Lawless. Yep, right. Lucy Lawless, who is married to Bob Tapert, who is a producer, I think he's a producer, on Evil Dead.
Oh.
And over the PA system, she says, can Ted and Theodore and Samuel Raimi come to the principal's office or something like that? Which I don't think you can pick. Well, I certainly didn't pick it up. I don't think you can hear it, but whoever was doing the commentary said that's what they're saying. That's Lucy Lawless.
Wow.
So I thought that was interesting.
How did that come about then?
Evil Dead connections. I don't know. I guess maybe it's just like a horror kind of. Not everyone in horror. There are quite a few sort of little groups of people, and Raimi's all about helping out other movies, isn't he? Not that he let them use his name. I don't know how much help that is for this movie, but I'm sure he had to go. Okay.
And then never gave it a second thought.
So you had to spend at least 3 seconds thinking about it. What a guy.
I really want to talk about the opening project that's kind of playing over the photographs, the series of photographs that's over the opening credits.
Yeah. Do they do is it the white picket fence just before the credits roll?
Yes.
Okay. Because I remember watching it the first time thinking, oh, okay, movie over, is it? That's interesting. But yeah, she's dead. And that was in the script. Karen Walton had described it, white picket fence, suburbia. Yeah. There's obvious metaphor there.
Mm-hmm. It should have been, in hindsight, it should be obvious how much she hates suburbia, shouldn't it?
Right? Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, you get that, and then you get the opening sequence where you see that they do this all the time. They just pretend that they're dead. And I do that sometimes if I want to get out of a conversation.
You just fake expiring.
Yeah.
Which I'll remember that.
Works temporarily until you've got to explain to the ambulance that actually we don't need you, and I'm taking away valuable resources to people that need it. Not that that's ever happened.
Sure, yeah. I do really like that conceit though, because the horrible little alienated alternative girl that lives inside of me would absolutely have done that at that age.
Yeah.
If I'd thought of it.
Well, it's very artistic.
I think so.
Yeah.
Some of those pictures were pretty impressive.
Yeah.
How did they make it look like she was hanging? Genuinely. I still can't work that out.
You know when you see like people in London and they're pretending to levitate, but they're sort of, you think, they've got a big gown on and they're sitting on a platform.
Oh, right.
They've just hidden the collar. It's probably something like that, I would imagine. Magic. They've got Blaine. Blaine was on the crew. David Blaine, not Blaine from Predator. Jesse Ventura.
I assumed, yeah. Should have said Dynamo.
Dynamo. What happens to Dynamo, eh?
I don't know. I'm sure he's still booking gigs at Pontins.
I heard he's dead. I heard he died from a giant pack of cards were dropped on him. Like it was part of a trick.
Did you?
Yeah,
Did you read that on Twitter?
He was meant to escape a giant pack of cards falling from the sky, and he didn't. He couldn't run away because they were too big.
Got it.
It's like Prometheus when she's running away from the ship.
So he's hoisted by his own petard, you could say.
Yeah.
This is all alleged and definitely not true. But yeah, what did you think of the girls' relationship? I don't have any siblings, so I don't really have anything to relate to in that regard.
You were an only child, so you didn't have that.
I still am an only child.
Of course, yeah. I probably phrased it that way because I was an only child up until the age of 13 when I acquired a sister. And
that's such a weird way of phrasing it. I found her in the supermarket.
No, my mum gave birth to her. And what did I think of the relationship? I thought it felt very real. It felt like a real kind of sibling relationship. It was interesting because it didn't do the kind of the obvious cliche, you know, there's a kind of a bully and there's a follower. There was a bit of following in terms of Bridget because she did follow. Yeah, you do. Ginger.
You are given the impression that Ginger's definitely the dominant one.
Oh, 100%. And Bridget is younger, but she
and sort of idolizes her in a little way.
Yeah, but she had skipped a year, so she ended up being in Ginger's year at school, so they were getting to the same classes and just did everything together. And she was a bit of a follower. She did do everything that she kind of said, and you get the impression early on, or at least I did, that quite a lot of what Bridget does is just to follow in reaction to or because of her sister. She doesn't really have a lot of her own agency, which I guess is her kind of journey in the movie.
That's her arc, yeah. Severing that tie.
But I did really like the relationship. It felt real to me.
Same. I wonder if that was kind of informed by the fact that maybe the actresses had crossed paths over the years.
I'm sure that helps. They had a natural chemistry.
Yeah, because it did feel lived in.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed the parents as well.
I thought Mimi Rogers was incredible in it. It's very funny.
Yeah, like that's. I would say there are definitely some really effective moments of dark comedy in this movie.
It felt almost satirical in a way.
Yeah.
Her performance particularly, I would say.
Yeah. And I think predominantly she's kind of got some of those better moments.
Yes.
And even the dad as well.
But even the dad, but it's very subtle. He kind of, it's a couple of glances, and that's kind of part of the joke, isn't it, as well? That he's a bit useless.
Yeah, very much like a backseat parent.
Yeah. And wears a cardigan at the dinner table. Can do that.
Nothing wrong with cardigans.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, just his...
but not at a dinner table.
Some of his mannerisms as well, like the fact that he's clearly so uncomfortable talking about menstruation at the dinner table. And
he physically kind of recoils when they say that.
Yeah.
And that's a really good representation of what you're going for in this movie. It's funny that that dinner scene I saw in the Walton commentary, she mentioned that she'd gotten a note from a producer to say, "Oh, during this dinner scene, you know, you're being a bit sexist, aren't you, towards the men?" To which she just replied with laughter.
Yeah, that's the correct response.
And went about her day.
I think I love Karen Walton.
I think you will as well. Like I said, I wish I'd started with that one so I could have finished it. But maybe next time we put it on, maybe I might suggest let's just watch the commentary with Karen Walton, because it seems like it's all of the things that you like about this movie, and we'll probably explore them in a little bit more. Mm-hmm. But I feel like they're probably a lot of her ideas, and I know the director John Fawcett. I've got a picture of a tap in my head. That's how I'm remembering his name.
That's your shortcut.
Or Chris Hemsworth in that. Never mind. What was I saying? This always happens to me. Always happens to me. It's frustrating. John Fawcett. It was very much his kind of idea, I think, initially. He brought Karen Walton on board, who was initially reluctant.
Okay.
Because she wasn't a fan of horror, particularly.
Right.
She certainly wasn't a fan of kind of what horror was doing with get a chick with some big boobs and a tight t-shirt and all of that stuff.
Well, I mean, a lot of horror, particularly in the 80s, was quite sexist.
Yeah, she wasn't a fan of the sexism of those movies. So what Fawcett challenged Karen to was, well, why don't you make a movie that you would watch? Why don't you write something that you would find interesting? Which I think is great.
Yeah, that's the way to do it.
That is exactly filmmaking, collaboration, exactly what it should be. I've got this great idea, but I think you would probably bring something really unique and interesting to it. Let's get together. And then there was someone else, I forget the guy's name, but after that they brought on someone else as a kind of a story coach, who also was another layer of kind of refining it and bringing new ideas. And I think maybe he introduced the idea or suggested the idea of linking the kind of the lunar cycle with the menstrual cycle and that kind of thing.
Genius.
Yeah.
Genius. That's really interesting, actually. Was the story concept John Fawcett's?
I believe he wanted to make a werewolf movie, I believe. Mm-hmm. And that's all that I know in terms of what his ideas were. I don't know how much. I know that the story developed and they were writing it and rewriting it and doing drafts for 3-4 years, apparently. Okay. So they really spent a long time on it. And I'm sure that they collaborated, and he had ideas for her and she had ideas for him and vice versa. So it was probably a collaborative effort. But I don't know the actual how much of what was shown to us was in the initial or nugget of an idea. I've got no idea.
I would love to know what kind of informed the girls' personalities, because that's one of the things I love about this film the most.
Okay.
It's just it's really rare to see movies about weird girls, especially when they're front and center.
Yeah.
It almost never happens. It's why I love movies like May as well.
I've seen that movie.
You have?
Which is about the thing, when they do the thing.
Yeah. Very well remembered.
Yeah. Sequel to Calendar Girls.
But I think, I think that's one of the things I love most about it, is you just don't necessarily see movies about female characters that are dark as fuck and a little bit morbid.
Yeah, that's fair.
And I think a lot of people their obsession with death is perhaps not super healthy.
I would argue that you're correct.
Yeah. But I think a lot of people kind of look down on death positivity.
Yeah.
Like it's something that happens to all of us. We have to get to grips with it.
Yeah.
Everybody, to a person. So I think death positivity is something that should be talked about more, arguably. And it's obviously that has made them outsiders. That, amongst other things, has made them outsiders.
Yeah, I really like them.
Yeah, me too. I would hang out with these girls.
Agreed. I think that they're very interesting. And it's so... You look at all of the young characters in this film, out of everyone, they're the two that I'm like, well, they're interesting. I really want to hang out with them, and fuck all of those other people that are boring and normal. Mm-hmm. But I think that the fascination with kind of death, like, yeah, they probably do take it a bit far, But also that is kind of, for me anyway, was part of growing up, is you go through that kind of nihilism stage, but part of growing up is getting over that in a way and just going, yeah, it is, yeah, okay. But what are you going to do?
Yeah.
And it's kind of that attitude that's, for me anyway, is part of my growth as a young human boy.
I do really like the way that they're written in such a well-rounded way, though, because they're not necessarily even that likable. I think it's tricky because obviously Ginger starts a period, again, mirroring Carrie. They're arriving at this part of their life quite late.
Yeah.
Compared to their peers. And she becomes quite unpleasant. But that's so true to life. I was a horror to my mother. You
didn't become a werewolf and try to attack your mother, though?
I didn't, no. But I also didn't get attacked by a werewolf, so I think that's the difference.
Who's to say what you would have done if you had been?
Exactly.
You don't know.
It probably would have mirrored this exactly.
But you've got to put yourself in that position.
Right?
And ask the question, what would you do? Because you don't know until
it's
you're
a scenario that could happen to any one of us.
Yeah.
I just think
you thought they're kind of realistic
portrayals. Very realistic
but
portrayals.
Not necessarily always positive characters.
But I was beastly to my mum when I was that age.
Yeah.
I was a horrible, horrible teenage girl.
We're all wankers when we're that age.
Yeah.
I think that's part of it. You know, you don't mean to be. You've just got all of these things going on, these hormones and stuff, and you're a bit of a prick and you don't really understand what your parents are.
Yep, you're having mood swings all the time.
Yeah.
Being a bit bratty.
Well, you're going from your parents being God to, oh, they're not God, to, why aren't you God?
Yeah.
To, oh, you're not God. Like, that's kind of the growth that I went through with my parents. And when you're that age, you're like, yeah, it's confusing. And I think most parents get it, right?
Yeah.
I'm not a parent myself. I don't think you are either.
You don't think?
Well, I was thinking about the cats. Like, technically, you're their mum.
I mean, yeah.
But I bet, like, that's universal.
Yeah.
Just all parents have had shit off of their kids. And if they haven't, then there's probably something wrong. That kid probably turns into a serial killer. It's Dexter.
Maybe. Yeah. It's the next Dharma.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do really enjoy that. And the stuff that they go through at school as well, I found to be super realistic because, again, in the realm of like them not being perfect protagonists and not being all that likable, there's this one scene where they're playing hockey outside and they're stood on the sidelines and I think Ginger says, search and destroy, and then names one of their teammates. And then Bridget comes out with this extended kind of, I guess, death fantasy for this person.
Yeah.
And I loved it because I was bullied horribly when I was that age. And it can make you mean. It can make you really disillusioned and disenfranchised and angry. And I think, personally speaking, like I did lash out a little bit in private.
Yeah.
And it's harmless because obviously you're not actually wishing death on people. But it's not a nice thing to do at the same time. So I really enjoyed that. And the way it's scripted as well. It's almost like Clueless level slang. I really, really enjoy the dialogue in this film. Yeah. So let's talk about Sam a little bit more.
Not Fireman Sam.
Not Fireman Sam, no.
Shame. Fireman Sam.
No.
Drug dealer. Yes. Okay. Let's talk. Let's talk about not Zeke. I was thinking about Zeke.
I could see that. He's
Zeke's got a little hair that sticks up.
A little alfalfa.
And he keeps drugs in pens. Zeke.
Is this in the faculty universe? Do we think? Okay. You've just decided that. I really like his character as well.
Yeah. Okay. In what way? What's the
similarly in the way that he's written quite just he's well rounded.
I would say that he again seems quite real.
He's like a kind of a sketchy character. He's doing things that I don't necessarily approve of, i.e. sleeping with teenage girls and dealing drugs.
I mean, is he sleeping with teenage girls?
Yeah, based on what Trina says before her demise. Yeah,
I didn't catch that.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Oh, well, that changes everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So he's not like a great person, but at the same time, he does kind of volunteer his time to help Bridget.
Yeah.
Whilst getting nothing out of it.
Yes. And he pays the ultimate price eventually as well. I think, he's a bit... I do enjoy his inclusion in it, and the fact that he's not... He's the first person that says the word lycanthrope, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because Bridget's like, well, I know what that is.
Yeah. He thinks he's being intellectual. And
he's like assuming that this kid's not going to know what that is. She's like, what the fuck? It's not a fucking werewolf. What are you talking about, you mad bastard? And then she's like, maybe it's a werewolf. Maybe she's a werewolf now. Oh, fuck. So he's clever. He's got the knowledge. He knows a lot about plants because he grows weed.
Yes.
And if you grow weed, you must be an expert in all things plants. I think that's anyone that's ever grown weed in a movie
is also a botanist.
Is also a genius botanist of kind of Matt Damon levels.
Savant.
Yeah.
Some sort of plant savant.
Have you seen The Martian?
No. Oh, no. Yes, I have.
Yeah. Oh, I like that movie. It's a good Sunday movie, that.
Yeah.
Anyway, I was thinking about potatoes.
Just thinking about Matt Damon again.
Yeah.
What do you think about his... What do you think about his interactions with Bridget? Because they have kind of a curious relationship, and I feel like there are 1,000 inferior versions of this script that do try to shoehorn in a romance.
Yeah, I think it was there. I felt like there was something there which may have been explored, but they didn't.
I'm so glad they didn't.
I agree. It didn't need it. Like, this movie was kind of chock full of themes and everything anyway. So on that level, I would have thought this is probably too much to have this kind of romance in there. Not necessary, not part of the narrative. But then also, you just don't want to see it because it feels like the obvious thing. And it would make you kind of dislike that character a bit more. So yeah, I'm glad that they didn't go there. But I did feel like that there was a hint at it, or at least a fascination with each other. And interests, whether that be romantic or platonic, I don't know, but there was some sort of connection.
But I think it does sort of highlight how smart the script is, that they sort of skirted around that and didn't necessarily directly address it. And also the way in which, obviously, when it becomes increasingly obvious that Ginger's turning into a werewolf, and he finds out about monkshood, I think it is. And the little discussion that they have about dosing is super smart, because like, how many films would do that? Yeah. The fact that he's just like, it would all be a guess. We can't account for like size, and there's no what's the word? Precedent for it.
Yeah.
Like a lesser film would have just been like, stick the needle in.
Yeah. I know exactly what you mean. And it kind of, those little things ground it in a way that makes it a bit more, I can grasp it a bit more, and it feels, I do enjoy those when you're doing werewolves and vampires and stuff. I like it. I don't mind watching a silly film. I didn't see all of the, what's the werewolf ones with Kate Beckinsale?
Oh, Underworld.
I think I saw 2 of those and I was done. But I only mention that because they were kind of insane and just fantastical. Whereas this is more grounded, and you get that sense, I get that sense anyway, from scenes like when they're making the monkshood juice and they're sort of cooking up, and it feels like a drug scene. Yeah. It is a drug scene.
Yeah, effectively.
And that's how it would go, I guess, if you had this magic plant that cured werewolfism.
I also think setting this film at Halloween is kind of a genius move as well.
Was it at Halloween?
It was set at Halloween.
They have that party where everyone's dressed up, so that should have been my clue, really.
It should have keyed you in, yeah.
It's not Labor Day, is it?
No.
I assume that's, maybe you do wear costumes for Labor Day. I don't know anything about Labor Day.
Do you know what Labor Day is?
I don't even know what Labor Day is. I don't know when it is. I don't know what it's about.
Our American listeners, please can you write in and inform Dan what Labor Day is? Because he's very confused.
No, I don't care.
But yeah, I think that's kind of a genius addition, because it allows them to sort of conceal Ginger's transformation a little bit longer, because she's just in a costume.
Yeah, and then that's when it turns into an episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Oh, okay. Do you have a problem with the third act?
I don't love the third act. That's not the reason why. Okay. I find the third act a bit flabby. It's a bit.
Do you?
I find it a bit paced a bit oddly. This movie.
From which moment?
It's difficult to say. I think the third act, I'm starting to have enough, and I want them to wrap it up.
Okay.
But I don't necessarily dislike anything in the third act. I just wish it was wrapping up a bit quicker, and I'm feeling the length of it. Go on then.
No.
Go on.
Oh, that's what she said.
Yeah, I do. I don't think there's anything specific. I just felt like I've got it now. I understand what we're doing. Why don't we try and keep this a bit tighter? Because I want this to be a fun experience that I can watch over and over again. And it just becomes a bit laborious to me towards the end.
All right.
Sorry.
You did.
Sorry.
I'm not expecting an apology.
Yeah.
You're entitled to your opinions.
I didn't know what was going on with the Mimi Rogers character. The I forget her name. We'll call her Mum. What she was doing in the third act, because she turns up to the party with the fingers in her.
She's found Trina's fingers in the garden.
And she pops them in a Tupperware.
She does.
As you do.
Because she's a turbo Stepford wife.
And then she brings them to Bridget.
Mm-hmm.
Why does she do that?
Well, that's kind of her redemptive moment, isn't it? Because she's sort of shown as this weird, old-fashioned helicopter parent who's trying to be a bit too involved in her teenage daughter's lives, but just wants to be like the ideal version of feminine. Like the way that Bridget distracts her with like, what do guys want? And she's thrilled that she can finally pass on some of this knowledge that's inherent to girls or something. And that's that moment where she's just like saying that, you know, I know what you did. We'll just let the house fill up with gas and light a match and we'll start afresh somewhere new. Your dad'll get over it.
Right.
I felt like that was such a redemptive moment for her because she really did love her kids.
Do you think so?
I think so, yeah.
So she said...
That's why I was surprised when you said that she played it as an abusive parent.
Yeah. And knowing that made me think of what were her motives in that scenario. Because like you say, she says, let's set fire to the house. And I'm first one thinking, well, that's a bit extreme, isn't it? And does she know about the werewolves, or does she just think they've done murders? I
don't think she knows about the werewolves, no.
I was kind of confused by that. Because I thought that she played the scene like, I know. And I'm thinking, do you?
I didn't get that impression. I just thought, I thought she'd assumed she'd stumbled upon a murder scene.
Right.
And that would make sense. Protecting her daughters.
See, she says, so she says, let's set fire to the house. As I said, bit of an overreaction. And I'm thinking, why is she saying that? And then she says, let's go on a run. All three of us, we're girls on the road. Let's all go and we'll look after each other. But the way that I found out that Mimi Rogers had played that character as if that character was kind of emotionally abusive, I wondered what her motives were in that scenario. Did she want to protect the kids and go off with them? Or is it because she still wanted to maintain control? She knows that they've committed crimes. They're going to go to prison. She's going to lose her kids. She no longer can control them.
It will reflect badly on her and her standing in the community as well.
Yeah, there's that too.
Yeah.
So I wondered how much of her suggestion in that scene was motivated by the need to nurture and look after her kids, and how much of it was, as you say, saving face in the community, suburban community. Is she just so mad and insane? And suggesting that she would set fire to the house would make me think possibly. Is it just that she was so hell-bent on maintaining control over these kids that I'm going to set fire to the house, we'll go on a run, at least I can still control you. In fact, I have even more control over you now because I've
got dirt on you.
I've got dirt on you. Yeah, I've got leverage.
That's a way more negative read than I had on it.
I think it was a bit negative, but I found it interesting to think about that character. And I think maybe she's the character I thought about most in this.
Right.
And apparently she chose all of her costumes and
I love it.
Insisted I mentioned
the hair with the two little ringlets at the front.
Yeah. And she's got that like denim situation with like prints of teddy bears and stuff like that. So it's an interesting she definitely made some interesting creative decisions there, and I think everyone was on board. Was like, yeah,
I think it paid
get the
off.
cookies. She suggested getting the cookies and the milk, and they were like, right, let's stop. Go catering, get me some cookies.
I love it.
Yeah.
You don't see her very much anymore.
No, you don't.
That's a shame.
Like I said, Lost in Space is my Mimi Rogers performance of Austin Powers. She was in Austin Powers 1, I think, as original female Austin Powers character in the 60s.
Oh,
Married
right.
to Thomas Cruise.
Yeah, that's wild.
I can't see that pairing at all. That doesn't make any sense to me.
No, nor me.
Mm.
Strange pairing. Second of 2 shows that we've mentioned Tom Cruise in, for whatever reason.
We mentioned Tom Cruise in Stand By Me.
Yeah, because of Jerry O'Connell.
Oh, yeah. You brought up his impression, didn't you? I forgot to watch it again.
I love it.
Yeah. I wish, do you know what we need to develop this podcast, right? I keep thinking, I've been thinking about getting the table situation sorted and some like fixed chairs and stuff. I would like to get a TV as well, and in this situation we could just like Google Jerry O'Connell doing Tom Cruise impression, and we could watch it now and react.
One day.
Yeah.
One day.
Am I thinking too much about this?
Perhaps.
Okay.
I think we should be thinking about ginger snaps.
Yes. Yeah, you're right. I'm starting to get a bit peckish, so we'll go and get them.
Good Lord. We're getting to the end now.
Thank God.
I don't want to stop talking about this film until we've discussed the transformation and the werewolf effects.
Yeah, of course, we have to. I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I would hate to get to the end of this and we've not spoken about the practical effects.
How can we not? John Fawcett refused to have CGI.
Absolutely correct move. I think the budget for this was $4.5 million.
That's what I heard, yeah. That surprised me, actually. It was higher than I imagined.
Same.
I always see that as this has been quite a low budget movie, which I guess it still is.
It still is a low budget movie, but I was surprised too. I think it was absolutely the right move to go for practical effects. 2000 CGI, you don't want to be involved in that.
No way.
No way. I mean, how many CGI movies from 2000 do you ever rewatch? I can't think of any.
No, probably not.
Yeah, right move. It's the werewolf design is really interesting.
I love it.
It's a werewolf. Mm-hmm. You can tell it's a werewolf, but it is slightly different to anything you've seen. And apparently that was what they were operating under. He's like, absolutely, this is a werewolf movie. It has to look like a dog of some sort. But we've got to do something different. So it must have been quite difficult, because there's not as many werewolf movies as there are vampire movies or zombie movies. I don't think.
No.
I can't think of as many. Certainly not as many good ones. But still, it must be quite hard to come up with something that's its own thing.
I imagine so, yeah.
And
I can count on one hand the number of werewolf movies that I think are genuinely really very good.
An American Werewolf in Paris.
It's not on that list. Talking about CGI.
Got Judy Delpy in it, though.
I don't care.
Not Sean William Scott. Andrew Scott. Scott Andrew.
Oh, I know who you mean.
That Thing You Do. That guy.
He's in That Thing You Do, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, fuck.
Tom
Everett Scott.
Everett Scott, yeah.
Or is it Thom? Is it TH? Thom Everett Scott.
I think it's Tom.
Is it?
Yeah.
The cinematographer in this is called Thom Best in Ginger Snaps. Werewolf movies. Yeah.
Well, American Werewolf in London, The Howling, Late Phases is a recent-ish one that I enjoyed.
Oh, yeah. Is that Mickle?
Yes.
Jim Mickle.
Jim Mickle,
Jim
yeah.
Mickle? Is it Jim Mickle?
Jim Mickle. Yeah, God, they're few and far between.
Yeah, I watched one a few years ago, which I thought was going to be utterly terrible, but was okay, called Howl, which was on a train.
Oh, is that an English one? Yeah, I've seen that.
Fine. But I think at that point, I've not seen that many werewolf films. Like you say,
Dog Soldiers.
It's dogs. Yeah, it's Dog Soldiers, which might be my favourite. I don't know. Oh no, probably American Werewolf in London. I can't think of too many more. We've mentioned Teen Wolf already.
It's almost always men.
It is always men. I can't think of a single werewolf movie except from Judy Delpy. That's the werewolf in spoilers.
So yeah.
But she makes Tom Everett Scott a werewolf, and then he becomes main werewolf.
Yeah.
And she's like, don't do werewolf stuff because you'll regret it. He's like, I'm going to do werewolf stuff because I want to bone you, Judy Delpy. And then that movie ends.
I quite enjoyed the way they did werewolves in Being Human. That was all right.
Oh yeah, that's a TV show, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Is it Ghost Werewolf Vampire zombie or something. Yeah, I don't think I saw it, but I think my
thought
mum
it was
watched
pretty
it
good
and enjoyed it a lot. Tried to get me to watch it. Yeah.
But you just don't often see a female take on this subgenre. So I think that's another reason I enjoyed this, because it was so different. And in terms of the creature design, we don't get much of a sense of it, but I love that it's sort of canon that the werewolves carry over some of their human traits.
Okay, such as...
Well, they have that discussion, Sam and Bridget, after Sam hits the werewolf with his car.
Yeah.
And he was saying he thinks it's a werewolf. And she was saying that's, they're not real, it can't be. And he was saying, well, it had a human circumcised dick.
Oh, did he? I completely missed that.
Yeah. So, and I read a little bit about that. Like John Fawcett did kind of make a point of trying to incorporate that.
Okay.
Which I thought was interesting. I would have liked to see more of that, actually.
I noticed how Ginger's werewolf had breasts at the end of the movie.
Yeah. I bet you did, perv.
It's a very confusing time. Oh, that's gross.
But I particularly like her transformation in the back of the van.
Yeah.
Because it looked painful.
Yeah.
It looked horrendous. And I think that sort of really... What's the word? I can't think of the word that I'm looking for. It was kind of a nice denouement to...
Sure, I definitely know what that means.
To the metaphor. Because puberty is often painful, emotionally and physically, for women anyway. So yeah, I think it completely fits for me. And it just looked so unpleasant and like crunchy and gross.
That's what you want from a transformation scene, isn't it? The one that always springs to my mind is obviously the American Werewolf in London one.
Because that's amazing.
The holy grail of transformation scenes, isn't it?
Rick Baker?
I don't know, actually. I'm not sure.
I can't remember.
We will get to that movie at some point.
Yeah, for sure.
But I don't think we can do a werewolf season because, as we said, there's just not enough.
It's just going to be the same.
It's going to be Ginger Snaps too.
Yeah, it's just going to be a lot of the same film. Yeah. But yeah, I do really like that they did something a little bit different, and I loved the transformation. I love the final werewolf form.
Yeah, agree.
And the fact that they kind of did their own take on the lore as well, because previously it's always been you turn on a full moon but retain your human form afterwards. Whereas this, it felt like the transformation was permanent.
Final, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. They didn't really explain that, did they? But you get the feeling. I think it was
heavily implied.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah.
That, once you turn into the dog beast, that's it. That's your life now, and you've got to eat Norman every day.
You have to eat Norman. But that's kind of why it works so well as a metaphor for puberty, because once you're an adult, there is no going back.
You're right.
You're stuck like that, for better or worse.
Of course, yeah, that makes so much sense now. Now you just said that, yeah, absolutely. I really like the final form of the werewolf too. It's kind of lit quite nicely and it's not overly exposed, so you can get away with quite a lot, I feel like. And just the gooey blood situation, it was a very gooey film, isn't it, really?
Yeah, yeah.
And especially when Bridget is just tucking into some blood there, it's gross, it's grotesque, but it makes me feel like very specifically gross and disgusting, and it's very effective in that way. Well, I do really like all of that werewolf stuff at the end, but I don't love the setting in the basement. I find that a bit empty. I suppose it literally is, because they've not got any plasterboard on the walls and you can see all the stud work and stuff. But I feel like that was kind of maybe a missed opportunity. We could have maybe personalised that a little bit. I think the director was quite a big fan of it and liked the look of it. But also I think it's probably budgetary. If you don't need to dress the set, great. But I don't know. I just thought it wasn't very visually interesting to me. And I thought I would have liked it if it was I don't know, just something a bit more interesting.
That's fair,
better location. But, it's probably budget-based. You can't have a final werewolf fight on the Empire State Building in this movie, can you?
Not with a 4.5 million budget, you can't. No. Yeah, I think I agree with that, actually. But I do feel like the final showdown had to happen in their bedroom, because they said like they don't really go out anywhere. They spend most of their lives together in that room. So I think it had to end there, didn't it?
It does make sense from a story perspective as well, and especially Bridget, her arc and her development throughout the movie, from following her sister, they spending all of their time in their room, so at the end she's the one that kind of releases her from this curse. Did she mean to kill her sister, do you think? Was it instinctual? Was it just like...
I'm unclear on that. Yeah. I think maybe she did,
because it's not like she was running to go and kill her sister. She was just lying there, and Ginger fell on the knife, and she had the syringe in the other hand, obviously representing life and death for the director and probably Karen Walton, I would say. So it's very interesting that character is making that decision, and it's a 50-50 decision, and she makes a decision to kill her. Whether that was conscious or not, I don't know, but
I feel like because it's such a split-second decision, I find it quite difficult to have an opinion on that. I think maybe subconsciously she did it intentionally, because I think to some extent she loved her sister, obviously, but perhaps felt a little bit burdened by her.
I agree.
And because Ginger was the more overbearing one, definitely the dominant sister. So I think perhaps she felt like she was liberating herself as well.
I felt that way too. I think that works narratively.
Yeah.
So I kind of I think instinctively she probably went for the knife, which, like you said, is a subconscious thing. She probably didn't want to, but like you say, she's cutting ties. She's free now. Well, if she hadn't infected herself with wolf juice, which I didn't like that.
Why? What didn't you like about that?
It just felt like a poor decision to me. I was just like, why are you doing this? This makes no sense for you.
So to me, it makes perfect sense, because in the first time we really see them and they're having the discussion on the bed, and like Ginger's kind of holding the knife to her wrist and talking about ways that they're going to commit suicide. And she holds her hand out for Bridget to grasp, and they both have scars on their palm. So it's something they've done before.
Yeah.
They have this existing blood bond. So to me, it made sense, because she was trying to persuade Ginger to come back with them so that they could use the syringe.
Right.
And because she was so confident that the monk's hood worked, she was like, it's fine, we'll sort her out, then cure me.
Yeah.
So that wasn't an issue for me.
See, I guess I was further along the journey of her becoming her own person. And when she made that decision, it felt like a
step backwards
step to me. Yeah. And I hear what you say, like end of second act. Yeah, that probably does make sense narratively. I just didn't love it as a decision, and I was kind of frustrated by it.
Okay.
But yeah, it obviously they've got a precedent for that. Like you said, they've got scars there. They've got a death pact, haven't they? They have a death pact to commit suicide. At 16, was it?
Out by 16 or dead in the scene, but together forever.
Right. Okay. And you,
I've seen this film a lot.
Yeah. And you get the sense that Bridget is kind of not really on board with that as the film goes on.
Well, I don't know, because there's that line of dialogue when Ginger says, like, I said I would die for you. And then Bridget responds by saying, you said you would die with me because you had nothing better to do. So I get the impression it's perhaps more Bridget's thing.
Oh, do you? Okay.
But then, I mean,
I just got the impression that everything that they do is basically Ginger's idea. And I could be wrong on that. I don't really take anything away from Bridget's character, but for me, that's her journey, is going from her sister's shadow to being her own person. And I thought, as the movie went on, I got the sense that they agreed to do this thing. I think they said in the movie when she was 8, so that would have made Ginger 9, I'm guessing. So 8 and 9, they made this thing. And the longer time's gone on, she thought, that was a bit silly, wasn't it, that we agreed to do that thing when we were 8 years old? But who knows? I don't know.
Never make pacts with anybody before your frontal lobe is fully formed.
No, I don't make any pacts with anybody.
Well,
have contracts. That's what contracts are for.
I made a pact with somebody once that we would get matching tattoos when we were both very, very, very drunk. And I went through with it.
Yeah, and the other person
And
who we're going to name or not name.
And when I showed the other person, she was like, fuck, I guess I've got to do it now.
Right.
And she did.
Oh, she did?
Yeah.
Oh, good. I thought you was going to say she didn't do it
No,
and I was going
did.
to out her.
She did.
Oh, good.
But not always the best idea.
I don't have any experience with any pacts. I don't think I've ever made a pact. I've made agreements with people. Many, actually.
Contracts.
Yeah, lots of contracts, lots of verbal agreements, lots of written contracts.
I think we should start referring to any of those things as pacts
As
now.
pacts, yeah.
Yeah.
Could you...
When the letting agent get in touch to ask if we want to renew another year on the property, we'll say, yes, we'll sign your pact.
Well,
email it over.
When they send it, maybe we can just sign it, but then we'll retitle the description. What's it called? The description. The email.
The tenancy agreement.
No, the thing that you write in it. The subject. Just we can write in the subject. Pact agreement.
Yeah.
Blood bond or something. Signed in blood.
Yeah, that definitely won't make them think that we're absolute nutters.
They do inspections at our house. I suspect they already think that we're absolute nutters because they see everything.
They see the taxidermy and all the film memorabilia.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that they have some sort of private WhatsApp group where they share photos of people's houses, you know.
Yeah, almost certainly. Like sometimes the story, like last time she came round, she was telling me some pretty funny things about what happens when she goes around people's houses and does inspections. Like they forget that they're there and they just come in and let themselves in. There's people in bed and stuff like that. But yeah, I expect there probably is a few WhatsApp groups, and I expect that they probably walk around our house and think, do children live here?
No,
because we only know about 2 adults. What's going on?
No,
yeah.
Children aren't welcome here.
But yeah, next time they do the inspection as well, we'll bring up the pact.
Okay.
See if they would like enter into a pact.
All right.
They'll stop doing those inspections then, wouldn't they? They'll fuck off and leave us alone if we start referring to it as a pact. You're right. This is a great idea.
So, ginger snaps.
Yeah.
Do you have any parting thoughts for us?
I really love how crunchy they are. And they're sort of sweet.
I wish
tasty.
I had some ginger snaps so I could throw them at you right now.
I would just gobble it up.
Oh my
Because
God.
I want nothing more now than a fucking ginger snap. And I'm going to get a ginger snap today.
Will you give me your final thoughts on the movie, please? Please.
I think it's quite obvious where I stand on this movie. I think there's some really interesting ideas in it. There's a lot of stuff that I haven't seen before.
Mm-hmm.
A lot, and it's really interesting to think about. And I really recommend the commentaries and all of that good stuff. I find it a bit of a task to get through the whole film. I think some of it feels kind of cheap, I would say, outside of the prosthetic stuff.
I mean, the wig budget was minimal.
It's the wig. I think maybe some of the
50% of your issue with this film is wig based.
Yeah, probably. It's probably a big part of it, you know, because that's all you can think about for the first 10 minutes. Some of it feels a little cheap with maybe some of the camera angles. You kind of sort of go for a Dutch angle. It feels quite 90s.
Okay.
In a way, and that's more, I guess, of a taste of like a. If you're into that, then you like it. If you don't, you don't, sort of situation. I think this movie's good. I just don't love watching it.
Okay.
Do you like this movie, Sarah?
Yes, you could say that.
What? How many times have you seen this? Would you say?
Oh, it's got to be about 25.
25?
I've seen it a lot. Yeah,
that's a lot.
I really like it.
That's more than I've seen Conan the Barbarian.
Is that that's the gauge we're using?
Yeah, well, yeah, I guess so. I think I prefer this movie to Conan the Barbarian. You know?
Do you?
Yeah. I mean,
Arnold Schwarzenegger's not in this.
I know. I think this is a better movie, and I don't think that's very controversial to say that. He punches a horse. It's very weird.
Yes, it's deeply strange.
But it's very entertaining.
But
anyway,
yeah,
Conan the Barbarian, that's another episode.
Yeah.
You love this movie. You've seen it 25 times.
I would say about that, yeah.
You keep coming back to it.
Mm-hmm. And I love the second movie as well. I love the sequel.
Yeah.
The fact that they sort of move the metaphor from puberty to drug addiction, effectively.
I suppose that was kind of the natural progression when you think about this movie, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It was just, it was a smart move. You're right.
I think so.
Got Tatiana Maslany in it, who's always excellent.
Tiny Tatiana, who apparently was about 19 in that film, but looks 11.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's great. But justice for Norman.
Yeah.
R.I.P. Norman.
Yeah.
Gone, but not forgotten. What are we doing next week, Dan?
What, you're asking me, are you? Okay.
Yeah.
We are doing a movie. What is a coming of age movie? What is called... Is it Moonlight? Are we doing Moonlight next week?
Yes.
Oh, thank God. Okay. I thought I was going to have to do
You're
some
the
creative...
one with the spreadsheets.
I haven't got it right here, though, have I? That's why I said we need a screen.
We can
just look up this stuff and go, oh. We can go, hey, Tim, can you look this up for me? And then I'll do it. Like, but we'll pretend
pretend that we've got a producer, shall we?
Called Tim, yeah. Yeah, Moonlight.
Well, curiously, this is one that you've seen and I haven't.
Which is quite rare. That hardly ever happens.
Especially in seasons that I program.
Yeah.
So I'm excited.
Yeah, good.